Hello and welcome to the last episode of No Lids, No Limit with Kin and
Hi,
Arek.
everyone. Hi, Eric.
I am so happy finally to see you, Kin. Long
We're
time.
so happy to connect. Our last episode, I had to have the AI step in your place, but I hope you didn't mind.
No, that's okay. And it looked really nicely. I like to play with this tool called HeyGen, and they do have an option to kind of you're putting all the topics and everything, and they could create a kind of podcast. The two issues I had, first of all, it was like 30 seconds long, so that's a little bit short for a podcast, I believe. And the second, I was kind of like a picture just standing still and my lips were only moving and it looked really bad, but they're improving the models like everything. Mythos just dropped, or sorry, they use a different name for that. So
Fable,
AI
yes,
is
I heard.
always
I was just reading about that. Fable
yep.
is looking to be a very exciting model that I'm very eager to give it a try because it's supposed to do some really good reasoning. I've always found that Claude is a very interesting model that works a little bit better than the other frontier
True.
models in terms of
Mhm.
doing reasoning, and that includes things deep analysis of some data. And I've been working a lot with that and experimenting, so I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, I played with the tool a little bit now, but be careful with how many tokens it is using because you can have just a not so long conversation and then poof, you're kicked out. But speaking of AIs, it kind of goes into directly the data centers. And when we're talking about the data centers, the space that also bring us to memory. And as we were just briefly discussing, the memory topic is still a big issue over here. I guess it's the same for you. So have you experienced anything like this?
I have definitely experienced this right now at my current workplace. We work with some clients where the designs use not a lot, but just a few memory devices, like the DRAMs, VRAMs type of components, and they're having a very, very tough time getting anything in the supply chain because I think what's been happening, and from what we're told by the big distributors, is that some of the big accounts essentially just buy up like almost a whole year allocation of the RAM from the fabs. And when you have the big brand names, and I won't name them, using up those parts, it doesn't leave any components available for the smaller players. So how do they get to those? Do you see how a solution can be thought of from a European standpoint?
Yeah, of course, we're sourcing everything as we can. You need to have the right broker, of course, in terms of the one that you can qualify as a source for testing for the richness of the part and that you are true and know what the kind of part is. But I've been recently on a panel, on the discussion panel at Hardware Forum, and one of the EMSs, they said they have a customer who just bought a lot of stock just a little bit before that, and they are fully secured, no problem, no issues. So they're really winning the market very nicely at the moment. But in general, yes, the most important part is if you cannot buy it through the regular source, then the brokers or the independent distributors, however you would call them. Honestly, I was thinking about the word because previously broker for me kind of felt in a negative tension, but I don't feel like it as well. And I kind of would like to start using the name of high service distributor for these kind of distributors because it used to be historically all the Farnells, DigiKeys, the Mausers, but then the service on those companies is becoming a little bit more digital and a kind of like layered. And these kind of companies that you are really reaching out to them in the matter of, hey, I really need support. These are the ones, okay, they will charge you for their service, but they will provide the best service. So I kind of think the name high service is moving a little bit out from the so-called historically catalogs and moving into the ones that we used to call brokers or independent distributors. What the ones that are really putting the high pressure on the service level. So yeah, these are the ones that we are mainly using. I don't know if you agree or makes no sense to you.
I definitely agree with that. I think the name broker has had its time, and you're absolutely right. We also think of these as independent distributors, the non-franchise distributors, and this is very much related to the earlier point you made. These high service, high value distributors can provide an added level of value to the distribution chain that we haven't seen before. So the traditional big players, I'm thinking the Avnets, Arrows, Futures,
Hmm.
fine job, DigiKey, Mauser, and so on. But the key that we've always seen them as supply chain partners have traditionally been not so much of getting the parts, but stocking the parts.
Yes.
And I think this is one topic that a recent inquiry to my AI with Gemini kind of revealed. I think, in 2026, this idea of holding buffer stock is starting to maybe be not such a good idea. Because back to the point of these big data centers that are building out, well, data centers don't build out overnight. They don't need this inventory immediately. What they're doing is essentially holding and building up a buffer. If I need more compute, then I'm going to deploy more servers and therefore I need more memory just in case. This
Hmm.
just in case problem, we've seen this recently in the post pandemic era. Everyone needed components just in case if the business came back. And look what happened. I remember back in the early 90s, when one of the big flash memory factories had a fire in Taiwan, flash memory went in a severe allocation and everyone started snapping it up just in case. With today's AI powered supply chains, as we more of this rolls out, I think this idea of being proactive rather than reactive, I think is starting to change. We can now get way better visibilities further down the supply chain than we used to, but we're not quite there yet. So people and many professionals are still behaving on this just in case and building up a buffer behavior. Do you agree with that, Eric?
Yeah, it's this kind of situation where you're kind of finding yourself in a spot, hey, I better buy because if I will be too late, I will not be able to buy at all. And then all of my projects will be gone or I will not be able to manufacture them. And someone else will have those and then buying them will not work. So I better stock myself with this 6, 8 months ago. Stock levels were still a big problem, right?
Yes.
And I agree with you. If we would have almost like a kind of blockchain visibility on what's there and who can actually funnel what, that would have been an ideal situation. And maybe with the advanced levels of the LLMs, maybe this is a kind of future that we could look into supply chain, but definitely not the story of today. Still, we have the panic at the disco, and everybody's buying what's moving.
I love the idea of the blockchain. This was an idea that I learned about a few years ago coming out of the post pandemic allocation market. For those in the audience who may not know, the idea with the blockchain is you have clear visibility, complete transparency across your entire supply chain. So you know exactly how much production is coming out of the fab, how many memory parts coming out for a particular part number, who is getting them, where they're being stocked. So maybe you might be working with someone like a DigiKey, for example, or a Future. Well, they have certain amount of inventory that's being allocated to them and when they will arrive in their hands. You see that completely in the ideal blockchain. And I thought, what a great idea to completely open that visibility. Because right now, the other problem is, and not to make us sound too old, Eric, you and I, but we're kind of also working based on a skill set that we've learned decades ago. The
Mhm.
old distribution system from the 1990s and 2000s really is kind of the old school in a way, and
Yeah.
things have changed. The
Yep.
landscape, the geographies have changed. We're way more globalized than we were before. The Chinese companies know this. I mean, some of the biggest independent distributors or value add distributors emanate out of a small area out of Shenzhen. And I've visited that place before, and it's a wonderful place. If you want any components, that's the place to go. But not everyone has the luxury of traveling to China, although it's a great place to visit. However, the way business is done has changed a whole lot. And I think for us that are older, we do things the way that we were taught. But I think there's something to be said about the new generation coming in to replace us who may actually embrace this idea of blockchain, AI driven supply chain management, and the way they tap into the component market.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. This is like me looking at some of the companies that were still using fax machines and not that long ago. And you were like, this technology is a little bit outdated. And now we are kind of the ERP systems that are kind of, heavy, stiff, hard to maneuver, not that agile for change. But the new wave is coming. So I do hope this kind of revelation of supply chain will come because it will help everybody out. And because I understand the value of building the data centers for the greater good and understanding. But in the end, if we would have data centers, but other components cannot be manufactured, then okay, but I have a little bit need of something else. I would like to have my PC that I can work on in order to connect to your data center. Yes. I don't see, honestly, even with the advanced works on on LLMs. I don't see this kind of blockchain supply chain coming anywhere soon, but I do see platforms that are really trying to show and increase the visibility. One of them is the company I also recently start talking with. It's called Hexachip, and they are kind of believing in this value of visibility. Now, blockchain, a little bit different story, but it's a good step of having the visibility of what's available where and how can we move in order to really manufacture in time. So yeah.
What are some of those key benefits that this platform delivers that we haven't seen before?
So normally you have access through your calcu quotes, your Luminovos to the kind of stock of the distributors, the one that are able to deliver the information via API or Excel spreadsheets or whatever. But then we are blind to what all of the manufacturing companies, EMSs, OEMs have. And then they can actually link to some net components, OEM secrets, or all of the other platforms. But is everybody doing this? If the data is clean enough to really be compared as an apple to apple, not always the case. And then if you have those platforms and the EMSs and OEMs are joining, and actually this platform is also being combined into your CQs, Luminovos, whatever you name, then the visibility is much higher. So not only you see the channel, not only you see channel meaning the A's, the high service or the catalogs. You also see the brokers, the independents, and also you see the levels that the EMSs and OEMs have. So you kind of see more visibility. Again, not true blockchain, but a very nice early step into this, I believe.
This actually brings me to another point, which I also have seen a lot. Our company has been working a lot more with clients reshoring their products from overseas.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
being located in Canada, a lot of companies here will outsource to China, which is a very common thing. And I've done that for many decades. When these companies reshore, they also create the same challenge in the buffering of stock. Because now, instead of working with a factory down the road from Shenzhen, where you can go and tap into a huge reservoir of components in that market, you're now working with a local CM in Canada, it makes it a little bit tougher because now the contract manufacturer here in Canada has to be responsible to tap into that supply chain. So having tools like what you described, I think really also helps to build that proper ecosystem. China became as big as it is now is because they've largely controlled a bulk of their own supply chain. But that's
Hmm.
starting to change because in Eastern Europe, where you're located, there's been a lot more growth in the EMS industry there. We're seeing huge growth here in Canada. No doubt, thank you to our partners over in the US that don't want to work with us anymore, but that's okay. We really need to shift some of that, the economy anyways, but not in a bad way. With all this put together, I think some of these new tools are really necessary. And I'm quite excited about the potential of at some point to have that blockchain that will
Yeah.
really help us give that transparency and visibility into the entire supply chain so that we don't have to be worrying about overstocking and holding inventory as long as we know that within a timely manner or at least a predictable time
Yes.
frame, we can actually tap into some parts. I understand you also have some data in the European market that you've seen recently. Do you have any insight on that, Eric?
Yeah. I mean, just Q1 of DMAS data. So for the ones that do not really know what that is, this is a kind of indicator of how European component business is doing. And we have the semiconductors and the IP&E. And then this data is fed by all of the distributors that are giving back the data to this organization, DMAS in Germany. And then they are posting the outcomes of the industry. So yeah, everything is very much green. Everything is pushing forward. Eastern Europe, selfishly, I need to say we are on a really good pace. And just briefly looking here on the data, we are up 15% on the semiconductors, and out of that, Turkey itself, because it's always reported separately, is 40% up versus the European 18.2. And on the IP&E, which is always a strength here, from the European 14.8, and Eastern Europe is already 22, and Turkey is 35. So you can see we are really behind the other trend, and this trend is surely going up, and it will stay like that. And we will see, unfortunately, longer lead times already. I'm also tracking the price increases. So that's a little bit unfortunate. A little bit of self advertisement. This website of mine, arekrataj.com, you can track the DTAM data and also the prices over there. So it's all available for people to have a look. So I can see the business is booming, but of course, with business booming, people are going into maybe not the panic mode, but let's secure what we can right now because we really want to manufacture. So yeah. And on top of that,
So
there is of course layer of the military market, which is, pressing quite nicely and people want to manufacture for that as well. If I answer your question.
if you were to give EMS some words of advice about this next quarter, what would it be?
So I really like there was the interviews by Miss Page at the EDS with all of the future DG, TME. I believe Mauser was there as well, and they were all saying it's not yet the panic, but it's going to be the stable growth. So I would say the same thing. And the most important for me is always to have a reliable partner, whether it's going to be the A ones. Or you're going to have your high value distributor, or you're going to go with the catalogs, because even the catalogs, they can really try and work with you on your forecast and work on the supply chain models. So these are the ones that you should start showing the forecast and trying to work as much as you can on the forecast. Yeah, not yet panic for sure.
I definitely share that great strategy. My supply chain team definitely has told me, don't panic. It
Mhm.
is okay. Yes, we're hearing all this news, but don't let the news drive you into a panic and be realistic. Talk to your suppliers, have a discussion with your distributors, work out a strategy. So far, yes, the buffering idea is still there, but
Mhm.
don't panic and start hoarding many components because that's not going to be helpful as well. So, great conversation, Eric. We always I love the insight that you bring and our conversation together. So let's wrap up by saying we appreciate any audience feedback in terms of
Yes.
what your thoughts are on the supply chain today and how things are going. And we hope that things are going well for everyone and we can overcome and sail through this little bit of choppy water. But the future does look green, as your charts indicate, Arik.
Definitely, definitely. And of course, if anyone has a different tool that they're using that it makes sense and they gave value for them, let's share, because we're in the electronic space. We are the one big happy family and it's always good to grow together. So yeah, please leave us a comment or an update as well. Kim,
All
thank you
right,
so
great
much.
conversation. Until the next one, Arik, we
Thank you.
will
Thank you.
sign off for
Take care.
now. Thank you,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Bye.